Hey viewers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We'll be continuing with our JavaScript series, and today I'll be talking about JavaScript objects. So what's an object? An object is a data type. Data type that stores data in key value pairs. Key value pairs. Okay, so previously in the videos we've looked at different data types. We've looked at arrays. We've looked at strings, numbers, how to put all of them in variables. And today we're looking at a special data type called an object that is typically used in storing data in form of a group. Think about how personal data is stored in the backend. It's usually stored in an object where you have an object having your name, your age, your demographics, any other details that may be needed to identify you in that application or to others that may be using that application. So in simple terms, you can just write an object by declaring a variable. Let me call maybe this object1, obj, let me call it object, and then you assign it, equal sign, and then curly braces. And then maybe to make it more descriptive, let me call this object of people. Okay. Now I'm just going to give names, random names. Say person1, person1. Call them maybe Jehozo. Person2. Person2 is going to be called Murergwa. Maybe person3. I'll call them maybe Gabo. Okay, so this is a simple object of 3 people, right? So that's one way you can write an object. And if I'll get to the console here, object of people, you should be able to see it here in the console. Person1, person2, person3. Okay. Yeah, and then there's this other drop-down arrow that has the different static methods and the instance methods that are available on an object that are natively available on it. We'll look at some of these ones later on. Okay, so this is one way of writing an object. The other way is using the object constructor. I say object1, say the new keyword for in a constructor, then object. Okay, so the object constructor will give us construct an empty object. So if I log it to the console, should be able to see an object1, which is here. It's an empty object. See curly braces, there is nothing inside. Okay, so let me also make another object here because I'm going to show you how we can add properties to it in different ways. Object2, new object. So if I want to add properties to object1, there is what they call the dot notation or the square brackets notation. I'll first show you the dot notation. I shall say object1, let me say dot name, dot name, the name here I can say 0, and then say age, object1 dot age, can say maybe 12. Okay, that should be a number, not a string. 12. So let me log it to the console. Console.log object1. I should be able to see here my object one. Okay, so I've created an object one here, and then I've added properties to it using the .NET session, where I have the object dot and then the key or the property, and then I assign it a value. And here you can see the object. So that's one way. Now I want to add elements. I want to add content to object 2 using a different format, which is the square bracket format. So this is the, let me say, object 2, and then square braces, and then the key, we shall put it in a string. Name, name is going to be Tony, and then say object 2 dot age, no, sorry, not dot age in square braces, so 20, and then object 2 square braces, maybe hometown. I'll say it's going to be Nyarusiza. Okay, and now let's log it to the console. All right, so we should be able to see it here in the console. We have the name, Umutoni hometown Nyarusiza, and the name Umutoni age 20 and hometown Nyarusiza. So that's it. We have been able to create objects, empty objects, using the constructor method, where we use the new keyword and then the object. And then we've been able to add properties or keys and their values using firstly the dot notation and then the square brackets notation. Okay, so that's how we construct objects, and that's how we add elements to it. So then how do we access elements? Accessing data in an object. So just like as you've been able to assign content to objects using the notation or using the square brackets notation, we can use the same kind of notation to access elements or the data that is contained in an object. So let me say if I wanted to access the age of Monezero here, or just say console.log object1.age. Should be able to see 12. Okay, so 12 is the age that has been of the person in object 1. Similarly, if I wanted to see the name in object 2, I can say console.log so object 2 and then square braces and then the name. Should be able to see it here, Mutoni. So that's how we access data in an object. We can either use the dot notation or the square bracket notation. Now let's look at some methods that are accessible on objects. Methods on objects, available on objects. On objects. Okay. Firstly, let's look at how we can look at the keys of in an object or the properties, and then how can we get the values. Okay, so the object constructor can be, there are some properties that are native on the object keyword that you can use to access more data about a specific object that you've already created. For example, if I look at object 1 here, if I want to access, so my object 1 here is the one that has Monezero and the age of 12. If I want to know the keys, other properties on that object, let me log it to the console. Console.log. I'll use the object keyword dot keys, and then I'll pass in my object 1 as the argument, and I should be able to see the keys on that object. So the keys are the properties. You see the key at the position 1 or at index 1 is name, and then the key at position 2 or index 1 at position, excuse me for the confusion. The key, the first key or property is name, which is at position 0, the index 0, and then the next key is age at position 1. All right, so I can also access the values of that same object using object dot values. And then I should pass it in object 1. And I should be able to see the values. So here, the value, we have the name, we have Munezero, which was the value that was assigned to the key name previously, as you could see here. And then we have the age, which is 12. All right, so those are two ways you can use the object keyword to know what properties are on a particular object and what values are there. So there are methods that we can use to create prototypes, to create more objects from a prototype that we already have. Okay, and some of these are called static methods. Some of them are static methods. Static methods. And let me say, if I want to create a copy of object 1, I can use the const copy object 1. I can say object dot assign, then I'll pass in object 1. And if I log into the console here, copy object 1, it creates an exact copy of object 1. So that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is, let me just copy this. And I'm going to make a copy of object 2. Okay, I'll call this 2. I'll pass in here object 2. Then I should be able to log here 2. This is another way you can create a prototype from already an existing object. So here I have a copy of object 2. So it's exactly the same copy, right? But then I can further modify it. I can decide to add more properties to this object. Let me say, if I said copy object 2 dot let me say profession, dot profession, and simply be carpenter. So here, if you go to line 36 and I open my object, you see you've added something else. You've added another property, object 2. So you can create a copy of an object by using the assign keyword or the create keyword. Okay, this should be create. Yes, and we should be able to. Okay. So either the assign keyword or the create keyword. When we use the create keyword, object.create, it creates a copy of that object, but what you add and the property that you just add on is what appears, and then it shows you the prototype object from which it was created. So that's the difference between the assign keyword and the create keyword. Let me do it here just to show you the difference. Copy object get profession. This one's going to be blacksmith. Or let me say that was what? Fish lady? No, that makes sense. Taylor. Yep. Taylor. Okay. And then here, if I log into the console, we can see if I add another property to object 1, it will show it here under it, Taylor, immediately. But if I use the create keyword to create a prototype, to create a copy of an object from a prototype, and I add a property to it, the property is what will appear, and then the mother object will appear under prototype. We'll show the prototype here with all the properties. Okay, I don't know if I've explained that well, but that's the small difference in how the objects are. That's how you can add properties to an object that you've created out of a prototype. And although here it may appear hidden here in the console, I can still access any property on this object that I've created. For example, I can decide to say console.log copy of object2.name. I should be able to still see the name. It's right here, Muthoni. Okay, so now I've created an object. I've created a copy of an object from an initial prototype, something that's my initial copy from which I'm making a second copy. Now I can decide to totally freeze these objects so that nothing more can be done to them. No change can be made to it. So if I say object object dot freeze, and I say object1. So I've frozen object1. Okay, so I cannot add any more property to object1. Just before I freeze it, let me just put up here. Let's log into the console so that you see it before I freeze it. Console.log object1. So it's right here, object1. I have it. It has the name Munezero, the age 12, and the profession as Taylor. So when I freeze it here, I cannot add anything to it. That means I cannot add any properties to it. Okay. So for example, if I try to say object1 dot hobby, hobby, and I say playing soccer, it will not appear if I log it to the console. Object1, you can see nothing has been done to this object. There is no change. We can't see the property of hobby because I've frozen it. No change can be made to it. No. And even before I add the hobby here, I can decide to check actually if it is already frozen. You know, console.log so.log object is a method called object.is to check if it's frozen, is frozen, and then you pass in the object as the argument, object1. Here you see true. It gives us a Boolean value of true to show us that it's already frozen. So there is nothing that we can do about it. But if I decide to comment this out, to give me a Boolean value of false, it's not frozen, and then I should be able to see the other property that has been added, which is the hobby, and playing soccer is the value to the property. Okay. So then I can, if I move back up here a little bit, there's another method that we can actually use to see keys. It's called object that get it's like going to be a dot that get property names. Then I can pass in my object1 here. Should be able to still get it here. That get property names. It's right here. Okay. So I can either use object.keys to get the keys or the property, or object.get property names. Yeah. So just to make the video brief, these are some of the static methods on an object. This is how we construct an object, how we add values to it, and how we can access the values that are attached to the keys or the properties in it. So there are other static methods and other instantiation methods on objects, and I'll link a URL to a resource where you can check out more. But in a nutshell, this is what I can teach you about objects today. I hope you found the video insightful. or hopeful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.